Okay. We are recording.
Let's do it.
First off, you want to introduce yourself?
What's up, guys? I'm Sam Fox. I don't know what important factors I need to state here.
You're a college student. Where you going? What you studying?
I'm a college student at CU Denver. I'm studying recording arts and vocal performance.
I'm a CU Denver student. I'm a recording arts major.
Alright, so I'm Jason. I go to CU Denver. I'm a recording arts major. Music, audio, all that stuff.
Hey, I'm Bria Combs. Major is pre-med/biology, and I am academically a junior.
First question for you, kind of a little bit like the intro, but a little bit deeper.
Cool.
How do you describe your identity from different perspectives, maybe like racially, ethnically, socially, and whatever way you want to describe
Gotcha.
your identity?
I would say I'm racially half black and half Spanish.
Okay.
Same breakdown ethnicity wise. Probably upper middle class kind of thing. Where, yeah, on the social economic scale.
I mean, socially, like, I don't know, I want to be like, I'd say like I'm an overall like positive person. I don't know, I like to be unique and like just be myself, you know. And then I don't know, what was the other options like?
Racially.
I mean, I'd say I'm black, you know, person of color, you know. And yeah, I've been happy to be out here in Denver because it's a lot different from where I like kind of went to school before in Arizona. So it wasn't as diverse. So it's nice being out here and like seeing all types of people.
Definitely diverse. Coming from a mixed background, half black, half white. I got step parents. Had step siblings, mixed siblings. You know, full siblings. Friends from different countries.
If I had to classify myself like using like specific terms or whatever, African American, also Hispanic, so basically Afro Latina, female, powerful, amazing, kind, hardworking, honest. Yeah.
A lot of adjectives in
That
there.
was like one of the best ones. God living.
Nice. My second question is, how would you describe the American identity? Like, when you think of an American, like, what do you think of? What would you describe it as? Any little points like that? Like,
Probably an inherently confused person. Just because we are so diverse, just by proximity. Like someone from the South is probably has a much different cultural identity from
Right.
someone from Washington, Oregon, like that kind of area where.
everybody doing their own thing.
Yeah.
Right.
So, if you try to boil down the American person to an average somewhere in the middle, you have a very confused person. That's probably, I think of that as a reflection on America as a whole. It's hard to agree with yourself when you do not understand what you
I mean,
are.
I'd say there's like two sides to it kind of, because there's kind of like the greedy, like kind of money hungry, like capitalism type side, and then there's also like the freedom and, you know, like we're really lucky to have the stuff that we have in America. So I don't know, I'd say like our identity is like, overall it's something like striving to be positive, you know, but of course there's things that get in the way, but yeah.
I think privileged, just because of like the access to like resources and like how Americans usually react to that is like very just kind of nonchalant. It's not very appreciated, I feel, at least compared to people from other countries.
And is this just like your kind of first initial thought for like just overall
Yeah.
American? Like when you think American, that's like
Yeah.
Sure.
And I've had friends that are like from out of country, like from like the Middle East. Like a good friend of mine is from Jordan, and they didn't have much, and like he would even tell me just like how bad it is, like compared to America. It's like he thought it was like the greatest like thing. So just stuff like that.
Usually, and this is probably like one of the most classic thoughts. The first thing when you think about America is quote unquote freedom. Usually, that's what comes with the American dream. Everybody wants to be free. Of course, that's not necessarily what America is, but to some countries it is. And so, when I think about America, you think about the military, or you think about freedom, or you think about coming over here to be yourself, be an individual, be unique. Now, of course, like I said earlier, that's not necessarily what it's all about, but that's what you would think about when you first hear America.
My next question is, which parts of your identity, if any, are similar to your definition of American? Like, basically, what you just said, how would you say some parts of you fit in?
I would say, me specifically, I come from a very, I think, unique and specific situation because I'm mixed, right? So I come from literally two different cultures. One of them much more strict than the other. Like Spanish heritage is much more well documented than this heritage of slaves that inevitably produced me. So, but like that's all part of it. Where we're a bit cultureless, and we don't even claim American as our culture because it's so undefined. So that's I would say close to my own self because my history has been erased. I'm not sure of my own culture on my father's side, kind of thing. So I think that's pretty American, not knowing of your heritage and the culture of you are what you absorb. Kind of when you're born American, you're a blank slate because we add so many qualifiers to American. You're African American, Irish American, Asian American. Like no, like that, and that's unique to being American too. So but I think that I'm pretty American in my not knowing my heritage.
I definitely say the freedom part. Like always want to be free. Like just be yourself. Like do whatever you want. Like have no worries about what anyone else is gonna think or like any restrictions on what you can do. But yeah, that's what I'd say relates to me the most.
I feel like just you can probably make the white side a little bit, like just from where I've come from, like the last place I've lived, it was more there's definitely a lot more money put into like the city, like Palm Springs area, Coachella Valley. There's a lot of like things there, like art galleries, mountain houses, like expensive stores, like clean streets, no cracks in the road, sidewalks, like that's literally sunshine and rainbows, like all the time for me, you know what I mean? But I don't know. So I kind of I could recognize that though, coming from like a not so privileged area.
And I noticed that you described your white side.
Yeah, well, this is because mainly this was where like they've ended up living.
Okay.
So I mean, because honestly on that side too, it's been like pretty rough. But grandparents kind of ended up moving there, kind of retiring. Still worked a bit, but that's right. They ended up retiring. So they just seen that a lot of older white people kind of like end up living there and settling there. Yeah.
One, if I would have to say any of them that align in terms of, let's go through the route of freedom, being able to worship whoever you would like to. And so, like I stated earlier, I'm a Christian, God-loving woman. And so being able to do that freely without being chastised and or beaten and or it being frowned upon is probably that part of the American dream. But if I were to look at all the other things that I use to describe my identity, those don't necessarily fit the quote unquote American.
Okay. next question, it's kind of basically the opposite of that question.
Gotcha.
Which part of your identity would you say are contradictory of the American, or at least in your definition of being American?
Gotcha.
American identity?
I think the easiest thing to pick out of that is the fact that I'm a split of two different minority groups is pretty interesting, because we use that word, which is minority, meaning like less than the average.
Right.
So if you took an average American person, you would have to assume they're white just on the word majority.
Right.
But like as far as like experience wise, or I guess the word would be experientially, but like I think honestly I was a bit more privileged than what the average would be as far as economic status, and I don't know. I think there's a lot of struggles that are very common that I didn't see growing up, kind of thing. But they're not necessarily like strictly American things, but definitely occur in America.
Different challenges and things like
Yeah.
Well, definitely the money hungry, like greediness type people, you know, and like just kind of I mean, of course, everywhere in the world there's gonna be like ignorant and like people like that, but like I'd say that it is a problem in America sometimes, like just like wanting to do things for money, or you know, not just because you want to do the kindness of your heart or something. I wouldn't agree with that part of it. Overall, it's like,
being like definitely the black side. Even just being black, I'm pretty sure you've experienced it like anybody else of color's experienced, like discrimination and racism. That makes you feel, people try to make you feel like less than what you are. It's like, I don't know, that can make you feel less than privileged. And then even on that side of my mom she's lived in a lot more like not so financially well areas, you know, ghettos, you know, pretty much the opposite of what I described, like, you know. So I mean, I've seen that too, so it's like, you know, that's
No.
So that sucks.
Right. Now, of course, and I think this is probably the biggest one, black. And the way we live now, which is completely and utterly interesting, is the fact that even though we have been over 400 years away from slavery, yet I am still only 3/5 human. I'm only recognized as 3/5 human. And so when you come to America as a black person and you know, the first thing you think about is freedom, you don't necessarily have that. You have to, as a black person in America, you do not have freedom just given to you. This is something, you can't necessarily even technically earn freedom. Freedom is something that you have to consistently work towards when it's in every single aspect, whether it's in school, whether it's a career, whether it's just simply you walking down the street. You have to always look out for yourself. There is no such thing as freedom as a black person here in America, and although it is something that we are working towards, it's just not there. It never has been there, and even though we've made progress every single time we like take one step forward, it's almost like taking 3 steps back. Exactly.
And my last overall question is, overall, what would you say your qualitative relationship between your identity and the American identity is? Do you appreciate being called American? Would you not? Like, how would you describe your feelings about?
Quality relationship to being an American, quite poor. I don't have much pride in being American, honestly, and it's not even, I don't hate America or anything. It's more like, I don't think we have a very good global reputation, and we're divided within ourselves, and we disagree with the world constantly, and we're also not particularly respectful of other cultures in our own country or in others. So that's because there's a difference between being like generally brash to interact with and being genuinely disrespectful. And we're, especially politically in our leadership, we've not quite had the best reputation
Right.
on the global stage. We've been clownish. So, so I don't know. I guess it's the only like label that I could call my own culture and latch on to, because like the Black experience in America is so like it's distinctly American, but it's not the forefront like presentation of America to the world. So so I don't necessarily want to group myself in with what I was born into.
Right.
Just because, like, dude, our two-party system means that for half the time when we have like a president that I don't agree with, that my ideals aren't represented to the world community. And the pendulum swings back and forward, so
Right.
But
Yeah, I'd say it's definitely like, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. But overall, like I have like an optimistic like kind of view on America and everything. Like I feel like in general, people, at least people that live here, like maybe not people that control the things, but people that live here want to like be good people. They have a good heart. So like I have a good outlook on people here.
And why would you say that? Why do you have a positive outlook?
I don't know. It's kind of like something I feel like, talking to like even like strangers and like just people around me, especially at college. There's so many people you like interact with. I feel like overall people just like have good intentions most of the time.
I still feel definitely good.
Okay.
Definitely. Like, despite all that, it's still been like, still a good life. But, yeah. I mean, but I feel like just, there's always like a high and a low. There's always both sides. And, I don't know. Definitely confusing at some points too, just more so the social aspect. And then like, just coming from different identities and like backgrounds, and then like having to adapt to new backgrounds, especially like new environments. Definitely, so like coming from starting off in a more like mixed area, like people accept you more, I guess, like if you're a person of color or something. So I didn't have a problem with that until I moved into a more like dominant, like white dominant area, and then people treat me a lot different. And like, you've probably heard it all. Like, I don't want to say it on camera, So, yeah, I don't know, but it's definitely helped me learn a lot, especially about people and how to deal with interact with them. So, I'd still say good overall.
Still good, positive relationship with your identity as being American.
Yeah.
Okay. And why do you have that? Like,
I feel like it's just because it's just, I don't know, it's just putting things into perspective, like, 'cause things could be worse, like, everything's a learning experience, so, like, if that happens to you, like, just take it, learn from it. If you don't like it, go somewhere else when you get the time, when you get the chance.
right.
Like, there's people that would kill to be in your position.
If I were to like take the two, it'd be more, I don't know, it'd probably be more a little under the confused light because of that, being American but still not having everything that you're supposed to technically like have as an American and all of that different access. So it's like, I can claim that I'm an American, I have quote unquote freedom as an American, but then when it comes to certain situations, then what I should have access to as an American, I don't have.
Thank you again. Thank you again.
course.
Bree.
Of course, yeah.
Michael. Future Michael, good luck editing another goddamn video. Bet. Thank you.
Okay, so this is kind of the aftermath or like reflection part of the project / documentary / podcast. Still confused on what I want to turn into, but hopefully by then I'll figure it out. But after the 4 interviews from Sam, Kai, Jason, and Bree, I think there are a couple different things that I picked on, or at least like patterns that I picked up and kind of found out about after watching the interviews back. I think one big thing is that students of color, or at least specifically in this case, Black or African American students, and specifically the context of college, and specifically in this context, SU Denver, with my specific people that I interviewed, I think one thing that was interesting was when I asked them about their identities, 1 out of 3 times a person started off with their race, or at least saying like, I identify as African American. So I thought that was a very interesting thing. It seemed that in the Black community, at least when asking about someone's identity, being American is very, very like secondary. It's something that's not really brought up until a little bit after. And then specifically in the one case that the person did talk about like being African American, they kind of explained in depth on why they didn't really associate, or the kind of negative connotations that are brought up about being American specifically. So I thought that was like a very interesting point. And then I think another interesting point was kind of the different perspectives on when I asked people, or when I asked the people I interviewed, like what their definition of American is. It definitely changes throughout the people. Some people, I remember Jason said he felt like the first word, or at least idea that pops up when he thinks of American, is privilege. Another from Kai is like capitalism, or kind of just like capitalism or greed for the negative parts. And then on the flip side, like freedom, having rights, things like that. In the case of Sam, he said the differences and the complexities of cultures, and really like the different levels of identities in the American identity, or what that is. And also in Bree's interview, she responded with like very like American, very like bigoted or self-serving or things like that. And I found it very interesting. Not that any response is neither right or wrong. It's just it's interesting to see what makes a person, what at the end of the day defines or what makes their definition of American. So yeah, I thought that was really interesting. I might actually I'm gonna get my, this is very informal, I feel bad, but I'm gonna get my questions and kind of like go through each one. Editing Michael, I hope you do good things. And then yeah, it was kind of a spectrum when it came to like parts of the identities of the people I interviewed, like how they lined up with their definition of American. In a lot of the cases, I think what aligned, or at least identities that aligned with being American, where like definitely a lot of the like complexities, and like kind of like the spectrum of both like different social classes being in a particular African American context, or what the Black experience is. That part was kind of like something that contradicted, but also in a weird way aligned with the American, or the definitions given for the American identity. So that's what I thought it was very interesting. It was like being an African American is somewhat inherently contrasting against the American identity, or at least in certain aspects. Like when we think of American, the first thing that pops up, it's usually not African American, which I don't know. I thought that was interesting. But overall, I think majority of the times, people's identity and the relationship with what they define as what is the American identity, or being American, I found it after these interviews, I found it was very, very optimistic and very hopeful. Though I think in every aspect, parts of like being American and being Black or being African American definitely pose a lot of different challenges and discrimination that must be faced. I think in general, I saw that there's still a hope of like maybe in a sense changing what it means to be an American, or broadening the definition of what it means to be an American. So yeah, I just thought that was interesting. It definitely made me reflect on myself and my own identity and what I perceive as American or Black, or just almost every aspect of like identity, whether it's racial, social class, sexuality, gender, things like that. It definitely made me think of how big and how broad identity is, in really the context of why people identify as something. Like what environments and settings have they raised in, what experiences have they had. So it's definitely made me reflect on what identity is, how it works, why it works. At least it gave me a sliver of what it means to be Black in America, or what it means to be a Black American. Either way, I thought it was an amazing experience. So yeah.